Okay, let's dive in. I want to start today with a little experiment.
Mm.
Picture an HR director. She's got an open role to fill, a pretty standard mid-level job. She posts job description A,
The traditional one.
the traditional one we've all seen 1,000 times, requires a bachelor's degree, minimum 3.0 GPA, you know the drill. She leaves it up for 3 weeks.
And I'm guessing she got a manageable but maybe slightly underwhelming stack of applications.
She got 47. Not terrible, but, not great.
Right.
But then she decides to run a split test, same role, same salary, same everything, but she rewrites the posting, job description me.
Okay.
She deletes the degree requirement completely. Instead, she asks for demonstrated experience and a portfolio.
So she's switching from a credential filter to a skills filter.
She did. And this is the data point that sets up our whole conversation today. Job description B didn't get 47 applications. In the same 3-week period, it got 289.
Whoa. That's nearly a 6 times increase.
It is. But I know what you're thinking, what a hiring manager would think. Great, now I have 6 times the noise to sift through.
That's the first thought, for sure.
But the kicker isn't the volume. The HR director admitted later that half of that new pool of candidates was more qualified than the people she interviewed from the first batch,
So she had been systematically filtering out her best people.
without even knowing it.
That anecdote it's the perfect entry point. It's not just a quirky HR story anymore. It becomes a question of, economic efficiency.
Which is exactly what we're digging into today. This is a deep dive into the skills-based hiring revolution.
Right. And we're not just going off one story. We've got a whole stack of sources to unpack this.
We do. We're looking at a 2025 analysis from IQ Talent Partners that covered 300 companies.
Mm-hmm. We also have huge workforce data sets from LinkedIn, some studies from the Boston Consulting Group.
And a really interesting case study on the Paris School of Entrepreneurship, PSE, which is trying to kind of redesign the university for this new reality.
So the mission today is to figure out why companies are making the switch, how they actually do it without that easy degree filter, and, what happens to higher education if the diploma isn't the golden ticket.
Let's start with those numbers. That 289 versus 47, is that a one-off or is that what companies are actually seeing?
It's surprisingly consistent. IQ Talent Partners, in that analysis you mentioned, looked at this from 2022 to 2024, 300 companies.
Okay.
On average, when they dropped the degree requirement, the talent pool didn't just double, it expanded by 6.1 times.
6.1x, that is a massive number.
It is. And it gets even more interesting when you break it down by sector. For tech roles, the expansion was 8.2 times.
I guess that makes sense. Tech has always been a little more of a meritocracy. If you can code, you can code.
True. Nobody really cares if you learned it at MIT or in your basement. But it's spreading. Operations and project management saw a 5.9x expansion.
Wow.
Sales and marketing, 4.7x.
Was there any sector where it didn't really work as well?
Finance and accounting. It was the lowest, but still significant at 3.8x. And why is that lower?
It's mostly structural. You've got strict certifications, CPA exams, auditing standards. You can't really be a self-taught auditor.
Right.
But even there, almost quadrupling your talent pool is a huge deal.
Okay, I have to play the skeptic for a second.
Go for it.
If I'm a manager and I suddenly get 600 applications instead of 100, that just sounds like a nightmare.
Oh.
Am I not just drowning in unqualified people who think, hey, why not? I'll give it a shot.
That's the number one hesitation. I don't have time for the noise. But the data says it's not just noise, it's efficiency.
How so?
The study showed that companies save between $7,800 and $22,500 per hire.
That's a huge variance. Where does that saving come from? 22 grand is a lot of money.
It's a combination of things. First, speed. Hiring cycles were 32% faster. You're not waiting on a scarce resource anymore.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, you rely less on headhunters. If you have a strong organic pipeline, you don't need to pay a recruiter a 20% commission.
And the third, retention. And this is the big one. They saw an 8 to 12% improvement in 1-year retention.
So the people you hire this way, they actually stick around longer.
They do. And just think about the cost of turnover.
Yeah.
If you hire a top grad who sees your job as a 2-year stepping stone, they're gone. But if you hire someone who's hungry and taught themselves the skills, they tend to have higher loyalty.
And what about performance?
That's the most interesting part. They looked at 90-day reviews. No measurable difference between the degree holders and the skills hires.
None.
None. In fact, manager satisfaction ratings were trending slightly higher for the skills-based hires.
That's the part that gets me. We have used the degree as this must-have filter for decades. If the performance is the same or even better, why were we so addicted to it?
It's what people call the paper ceiling. It's a real economic barrier. You're creating artificial scarcity. You're essentially saying, I only want to consider people who had the time, the money, the privilege to go to a four-year university.
It's filtering for access, not for aptitude.
Exactly. And according to LinkedIn's 2024 workforce analysis, that filter is discarding a huge chunk of qualified people. They found that 37% of candidates who were skills qualified for professional roles didn't have a four-year degree.
Hold on. So if my job posting requires a BA, I am automatically, from the start, throwing out a third of the people who could actually do the job.
You are, before you even see your resume. And a Boston Consulting Group did a fascinating deep dive into who these people actually are.
Okay.
BCG identified two specific archetypes that companies are missing out on.
I love a good archetype. Who are they?
The first is the self-directed learner. This is the person who learned digital marketing by actually running campaigns for a local pizza shop or learned to code through YouTube and open source projects.
The person with high learning agility, which is ironically what every company says they want.
Right. The second archetype is the entrepreneurial builder.
Okay.
Maybe they started a small business. Maybe it failed. Maybe they ran a landscaping crew or an e-commerce site. They understand hustle.
They understand cash flow and dealing with an angry customer in a way you just can't learn from a textbook.
Exactly. BCG's whole point is that companies say they want self-motivated problem solvers, but their automated filters are systematically rejecting the very people who have proven they are exactly that.
I buy the moral argument, and I definitely buy the economic one, but
Mm.
let's talk mechanics.
The how.
The how. As a manager, the degree was a shortcut. It was a lazy one, but it was fast. If I take that away, what do I use instead? How do I assess a self-directed learner without spending 40 hours interviewing them?
That's the big operational pivot. You shift your thinking from where did you go to what have you done? It's all about the portfolio model.
Okay, but for a coder, that's easy. Show me your GitHub. What if I'm hiring a project manager? You can't upload leadership to a folder.
No, but you can document the artifacts of leadership. That's the shift.
What does that look like?
For a project manager, you don't ask for their transcript. You ask for a portfolio showing a project timeline they actually managed. Ask for a risk mitigation plan they wrote. Ask for a retrospective on a project that went wrong and what they learned from it.
So you're looking for the messy paperwork that comes from actually doing the job.
You're looking for evidence of the process. For a sales role, don't just tell me you were a top performer. Show me a case study, redacted of course, of how you closed your biggest deal. What was the timeline? Who were the stakeholders?
It sounds a bit like Moneyball for HR. You ignore the gut feeling and you look at the actual stats.
It is, but, and we have to be honest here, it is more work up front.
How much more?
Deloitte analyzed this. When you switch to this model, that initial screening state, it takes 20 to 30% longer.
That's a big tax on a recruiter's time. Scanning a resume for Stanford takes 5 seconds. Reading a project retrospective takes 10 minutes.
It does, but here's the payoff. Because you do that deep work up front, the total time to hire drops by 32%.
Okay, walk me through that. Screening is slower, but overall hiring is faster. How?
Think about the old way. You scan resumes fast, pick 10 people who look good on paper,
Mhm.
then you interview them. And you find out 7 of them can't actually do the job. They just interview well. You wasted all that time.
Right. They give you the perfect canned answer to tell me about a time you showed leadership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With the portfolio model, by the time someone gets to the interview, you know they could do the technical parts of the job because you've seen the evidence. You interview fewer people, maybe 3 instead of 10.
So the interview becomes less about, can you do this? And more about, will you fit here?
Precisely. The heavy lifting moves to the start of the process. The whole process becomes way more efficient.
Okay, so you pay a tax up front to avoid a disaster on the back end.
That's the logic. But this creates a new problem, a supply-side problem.
Right. If employers want portfolios, where do 20-year-olds get portfolios? Traditional college is built around exams, not client work.
Which brings us to the Paris School of Entrepreneurship. You mentioned them. They're a really interesting case study here.
So how are they different? Because every business school brochure says they're practical and hands-on.
PSE seems to be reverse engineering the university based on this exact trend. They offer accredited degrees, but they've pretty much scrapped the traditional exam form.
No finals week.
No finals. Their whole model is based on verifiable output.
What does that mean?
To graduate, you don't pass a test.
Hmm.
You have to produce assets. For example, every student has to publish between 2 and 4 articles per year.
Not in a student paper, I'm guessing?
No, in actual publications with editorial oversight, they have to pitch to real editors.
Wow. Okay.
They also have to complete 2 to 3 consulting projects with paying clients annually.
Wait, paying clients? That's a high bar for a 19-year-old. What if they can't sell their services? Do they just fail?
That's the risk. The argument is that the market is the ultimate grader. They even have a requirement to launch businesses that generate actual revenue, €500 for a bachelor's, €2,000 for a master's. If the market doesn't value your work, you don't pass.
That's incredibly aggressive. It's almost like a trade school model for white-collar work.
It is, and it solves the employer's trust problem.
How so?
If a graduate hands you a PSE degree, maybe you don't know the school's reputation yet, but if they hand you a portfolio with client testimonials, published writing, and a P&L statement from a business they actually ran,
Then you don't need to trust the school's grading. The proof is right there.
the evidence speaks for itself.
What about the academic fundamentals, though? You can't just hustle your way through everything.
This is the part I found really clever. They outsource the validation of theory. They integrate external certificates from places like edX,
So you might be taking your core classes
from Harvard X or Imperial X as part of the PSE curriculum. They're piggybacking on the brands that employers already trust.
They're decoupling knowledge transfer from skill application. You learn the theory from Harvard online, you practice it with PSE mentors in Paris.
Exactly. It's a hybrid approach. It also keeps costs way down. Their tuition is around 8 to 11,000 euros.
That's a fraction of what elite business schools charge.
And the output isn't a GPA, it's a portfolio. It treats the student like a junior professional from day one.
Which is exactly what that self-directed learner archetype looks like in the real world.
It's building the plane while flying it.
So let's zoom out. We've seen the data, the mechanics, and how education is trying to adapt. If I'm a company listening right now, what's the long-term play here?
The IQ Talent research calls it compounding benefits. In year one, you get the speed and cost savings. That's great. But by year 3, you get a reputation effect.
You become known as the employer of choice for this non-traditional talent pool.
You get an asymmetric advantage. If your competitors are still fishing in the same small, expensive pond of top-tier universities,
You're fishing in the ocean.
you are. You get the first pick of that massive 6.1x talent pool. You get the hungry, resilient, self-taught people before anyone else even sees them.
And for an individual listening, someone who maybe feels stuck because they don't have the right degree,
The big takeaway is that proof of work is the new currency. It's becoming more valuable than pedigree.
so building a portfolio is the best career insurance you can have.
Whether you're 22 or 52. Publicly visible work, detailed case studies, real evidence of what you can do.
It's a shift from I am smart because I went to this school to I am valuable because I built this thing.
And that's a much more stable foundation to build a career on.
It really democratizes the whole playing field. It's messier, for sure. Reading portfolios is harder than just scanning for a university name. But the data on the payoff seems pretty undeniable.
The paper ceiling is cracking. It's just a question of who decides to climb through it first.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought, something to chew on as we wrap this up.
I've been thinking about the end. If the market really, truly shifts to valuing a portfolio of capability over a static credential, what does that mean for the physical university campus?
The 4-year break from the real world.
Yeah, that's been the standard for decades.
Yeah.
But are we moving toward a world where your body of work is your only real diploma?
Are we watching the unbundling of the university? In real time, that is a huge question.
It is. And if the answer is yes, the next decade of education is going to look wildly different than the last one.
We will be watching. Thanks for diving deep with us today. Go build something cool.
Take care.